Sometimes the hardest part about being a star is being stuck as the version the world fell in love with. Donny Osmond knows that story all too well. He didn't just become famous, he became a teenage idol, a symbol of innocence, and the picture-perfect boy America wanted to protect. But behind the spotlight, Donny was quietly suffocating, trapped by the image others had built for him. Back in the early 1970s, Donny Osmond was everywhere. From TV to stadium tours to magazine covers, girls screamed his name and record. Stores couldn't keep his albums on the shelves. Puppy love was a national obsession. He was sweet, clean-cut, and exactly what conservative America wanted. But Donny was growing up, and the world didn't want to let him. The moment his voice started changing, so did everything around him. Concerts slowed down. Sales dipped a little. And Donny, still a teenager, was realizing something heartbreaking. People didn't love him. They loved the version of him they had made up, a brand, a product. At the same time, another young star was living through his own version of the same story, just in a completely different way. Michael Jackson, the youngest member of the Jackson 5, was becoming a global phenomenon. Like Donny, he'd started young, dancing, singing, smiling, just on cue. But unlike Donny, Michael was being shaped into something new. As he got older, his team encouraged him to change, to grow up, to mature, to get darker, edgier, even mysterious. For Donny, that kind of freedom didn't exist. While Michael was evolving into a solo powerhouse with adult themes and bold fashion, Donny was stuck singing love songs written for a teenage heart in sweaters and soft pastels. In the eyes of his producers, his parents, even his fans, growing up looked too risky. Better to keep him safe, clean, predictable. But Donny saw what was happening, and deep inside, he was scared. Then, one night backstage, after a show, Michael Jackson pulled Donny aside. What he said left Donny stunned. In his words, Michael looked at me and said, "Donny, you're too white and too squeaky clean. If you want to make it in this business, you've got to change that." At the time, Donny was offended, hurt. He couldn't believe Michael had said that. But over the years, that moment stuck with him, and slowly he began to understand. Michael wasn't trying to be cruel. He was being honest, brutally honest. What he really meant was, you need to break out of the box they've put you in. You can't survive showbiz if you stay frozen in the past. And Michael was right. In the years that followed, Michael transformed, releasing Thriller, moonwalking into history, and becoming the biggest pop star of all time. Meanwhile, Donny's career started to fade. He couldn't shake the teen idol label. No matter what he tried, the industry didn't take him seriously anymore. But this isn't just a sad story, because what Donny did next took real courage. He could have walked away, retired young, lived off reruns. But he didn't. Instead, Donny chose to start over, to fight for his voice, his style, his true identity, even if it meant failing first, and through all of it. Michael's words never left his mind. That one piece of advice, once offensive, would become one of the most will become one of the most scariest. Only Ruby Kiss has the luxurious texture that glides on smoothly and leaves a whisk as to sins on a law Kamal said, your law sala dies. My see lies, words, never is myself. My selta dies, we is to see, my cellity. My cellis, we is cellite. We see, can reach it, so it is I would sev consis, capan I see it. But it is we, I sit, I say les it is I excuse as it's agree ka eucalypts, sick it deletes I resist it to be it it's it that guy Important truths Donny Osmond ever heard. Donny Osmond was only in his 20s. But in showbiz years, he already felt like a relic. His sound was labeled outdated. His name was tied to a younger, gentler time. And no matter how hard he tried to move forward, people wouldn't let go of the past. Record executives smiled politely, but passed on new material. Agents said things like, "Just be grateful for what you had." The same screaming fans that once waited outside his hotels, they'd moved on. To newer stars, newer faces, newer dreams, it was disorienting. 1 minute, you're the center of attention. The next, you're barely even noticed. Donny later confessed that this period was one of the darkest times in his life. He didn't just lose the spotlight, he lost his sense of self. Who was he when he wasn't? The world's favorite teen heartthrob. And could he really reinvent himself? Not just career-wise, but completely, now that the audience that once adored him was no longer watching. He was starting from scratch, with no guarantee that anyone would care. But here's where Donny's story takes a surprising, powerful turn. Because instead of giving up, he went inward as the doors of the entertainment industry slowly closed. Donny Osmond started doing something most child stars never get the chance to do. He started becoming a real person. He became a husband, a father, a man of faith. And for a while, he stepped away from the spotlight completely. No stages, no screaming fans, no cameras, just him. Trying to find peace, and in the quiet, away from the pressure, away from the fans and the fame. He realized that he'd never actually had a chance to know who he really was. For the first time in his entire life, Donny Osmond was in charge of his own identity. Around that time, offers started coming back in, smaller ones at first. Some comedy specials, few acting gigs. Slow, cautious re-entries into the limelight. But this time, Donny had a new rule. He wouldn't pretend to be the boy they remembered. He would only show up as the man he had become. It was a terrifying idea. Going back out there without the soft edges and perfect image. But he knew there was no other way. So he did what very few stars ever managed to do. He reinvented himself. In the late 1980s, Donny landed a hit single called "Soldier of Love." But here's the twist. The record label released it without revealing who was singing. Radio DJs just called it a mystery artist. No photo, no bio, and the song. It blew up suddenly. People were rushing to find out who this smooth, soulful new voice belonged to. And when they found out, it was Donny Osmond, not the boy, not the teen idol, but the man, and America, finally, was ready to see him differently. That hit started a new chapter. Donny wasn't just back. He was back on his own terms. No bubblegum production, no boyish packaging. Just raw, grown-up artistry that had taken him years to uncover. But he didn't stop there. He doubled down on theater. Took on challenging roles. Reinvented himself once more on stage as Joseph in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor. Dreamcoat, a performance that would go on to earn him standing ovations every single night. And more importantly, the respect of an entirely new generation. People weren't just clapping for nostalgia anymore. They were clapping for him and through it all. Donny never forgot the advice Michael had once given him. At the time, it felt sharp, maybe even offensive. You're too white, too clean. You need to change. But in hindsight, it was a moment of truth, because Michael, who later admitted to fighting his own image demons, understood what Donny was up against. He was trying to warn him, trying to say, you're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to grow out of what the world wants from you. And that's what Donny finally did. He evolved. Today, Donny Osmond is no longer just a name from the past. He's a seasoned entertainer, a loving father, a proud grandfather, and a man who has walked through fame, failure, and fear, and come out standing. He's still touring, still performing, still filling theaters. But more importantly, he's doing it as himself. Not a brand, not a projection. Just Donny. And in one of his more recent interviews, when asked again about that night backstage with Michael, Donny smiled a little and said, "You know, at the time, his words stung. But now, they were a gift. He saw something I didn't want to admit. And maybe, at the time, I needed to hear it, just not in the way I expected." It's one of the hardest lessons for anyone in entertainment, or even in life. You don't stay loved by staying the same. You stay loved by being honest. Brave, by letting go of who you used to be so you can become who you're meant to be. Donny Osmond's story is a rare one. He didn't just survive fame, he grew past it. He let Michael's brutally honest advice plant a seed, and years later, when the timing was right, he used it to rebuild everything, and for millions who watched him fall and rise again. That story may be even more inspiring than the clean-cut image he once wore. Because this version of Donny Osmond is not just a star, he's real.